So please join me in welcoming our moderator, Ms. Farish Welsh, from the Air Force Materiel Command.
I got to bring the mic down. You know, they forget some of us are only 5'2" with our shoes on, right? Anyway, can you hear me? Am I close enough to the mic for all of you to hear? Well, I'm excited to be here. This is into my 4th year in this position as headquarters AFMC Small Business Director. And you've heard from 2 of my center directors. You'll soon hear from a few more. But I am really blessed to have a great team under me. It makes my job a whole lot easier because I've got all these shining stars. And I want you to have an opportunity to get to know them, and that's why we're here today and doing this panel. But first, I wanted to give you a couple of key things. If you stop back in our tables back there on your way in or out in the next day or two, make sure you pick up a couple of the brochures if you haven't gotten them already. And I tell you that particularly when I found out that some of you had never been to Life Cycle Industry Days before, because in these brochures is a list of and names of people and phone numbers for your access to use to get into our small business offices. Really important information there that you're going to want to take with you. There's also kind of a summary of what each of the centers does. And although you saw a couple of maps here, if you can imagine the maps that Luke and Bill showed you, Air Force Materiel Command is scattered not only at those sites that they showed you, but all across the world, because our 6 centers cover all aspects of what the Air Force and the Department of Defense do around the world. In some form or fashion, the Air Force touches it. From the perspective of sometimes we are actually doing programs for the Department of Defense. Sometimes we've been the ones that actually get assigned to do something in collaboration with a joint program with another service or agency. So make sure that you are utilizing this little tool that you have with you. You can take those brochures with you so that you can contact all of us. Now, I didn't, because you didn't really come to hear me, I didn't bring any charts, but I do want to tell you that although you saw some statistics from Luke and Bill, Air Force Materiel Command last year as a whole did over $7 billion worth of small business work in the Air Force. We are about 75% of what the Air Force does. We did well over $4 billion, almost $5 billion in service work, and in the supply area, which would be the other weapon system work. You know, we had the balance of that. So we crossed the gambit with our small business opportunities, you know, across supplies, services, and across all the NAICS codes, across all socioeconomic categories. We met every one of the requirements that the Small Business Administration and the Department of Defense levied on us across the command. So we're real proud of that. We have been very successful in the last 4 years. So I like to tout the horn of the command as a whole. So what I have done is assembled here a panel from each of our centers. The only one I'm missing is the Air Force Test Center. And the reason that is because my center director there, who had come to other ones, but he has decided to retire on me. And his last day in the office actually is this Friday coming up. So he was not able to be with us, and his replacements aren't on board yet. So we don't have the test center with us today, but the direct line into that office for that replacement is still on the brochures, and it is still going to continue to be a functioning number for the Air Force Test Center, which the main location for that, of course, is out at Edwards Air Force Base in California. There is also another site at Arnold Air Force Base down in Tennessee, and another site at Eglin Air Force Base down in Florida. So and there are numbers for those folks as well in the brochures. So I highly recommend that you pick up one of each. The little blue one that I see some of you holding actually has the local folks. And then the one that is in white has all those that are scattered around the country and hither and yon. All these folks are more than happy to work with you, and I encourage you to reach out. The other thing I wanted to let you know, Bill talked a good bit about the pitch days. In case you're interested, all of the centers are very interested in this as well. As a matter of fact, all of them are looking at and establishing some with the center, maybe with their major programs. There are about 15 of them right now in work. So you're going to see a lot of advertisements for pitch days all across the country. So just because you say, well, I know that, ISR Soft, for instance, that was up here, I don't really operate in that space. Well, maybe you operate in the operational world, and they're looking at it too. I don't know whether Dave will talk to us about that, but I had some conversations just this past week about some potentials on how our Air Force Installation and Mission Support Center could do pitch days with their activities. So it's all going on everywhere. So just because you think, well, maybe my NAICS code doesn't exactly fit with some of the things that you're hearing here, it's okay. Your NAICS code probably fits somewhere in what we do in the Air Force, and they're probably going to be holding an opportunity. So keep your ears to the ground. Get on the websites that were mentioned, AFRL Hub. I think in the Dayton Innovation Marketplace website, we'll probably have some things listed or some connections to the hub. There'll be a lot of other opportunities. So without further ado, we are going to take this opportunity to introduce you to all of the centers and what they do. You've heard a good bit from Luke Schultz here at the end. He is my center director for Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, and I'm going to save any other comments for you toward the end because you already spoke and they heard some of that. But I'm going to start with Ron, actually, Mr. Ron Seville. He is my center director for Air Force Nuclear Weapons System. And so from that, I'm going to ask Ron to introduce himself a little bit, his organization a little bit, and kind of the scope of responsibility of your organization, just briefly at the kind of at the top level, so that they have an understanding of who you are and where you are.
Okay. Well, my name is Ron Seville. I'm the Director of Small Business Programs at the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center, headquartered at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we have operating locations, including Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, Tinker in Oklahoma, Hanscom in Massachusetts now for NC3, and am I leaving? Hill, ICBM Directorate. A lot of the stuff that we do, I have basically responsibility over the center, which means I'm reporting in all those operating locations to the Executive Director at Kirtland Air Force Base. What we do is various things. It just depends where you're looking. At Kirtland Air Force Base, we do a lot of ANAS contracting services, professional engineering services, stuff like that. If you're in some systems, some small systems. At Eglin Air Force Base, they do a lot of large dollar sole source work, a lot to Boeing. But of course, I'm looking there for any subcontracting opportunities for small business. And then we've got Tinker for sustainment, sustainment of the nuclear enterprise, that is. And we've got, let's see, Hill Air Force Base, which is the ICBM Directorate, which does a lot of large dollar. They do, though, some small business work at Hill Air Force Base. And we do also at Kirtland Air Force Base. Mainly, that's where you get a lot of the small business. Other than that,
Okay.
I think that covers it.
All right, thank you, Ron. That's a good introduction. You've met Mr. Harrison. He is my Air Force Research Laboratory Director. And so, Bill, I'm going to skip you a minute because we'll come back since they've heard a little bit about you. I'm going to drop down to Miss Angela Harris. Miss Angela Harris is works at Robins Air Force Base and is part of the Air Force Sustainment Center. Angela, I'm going to let you give a little bit of introduction about what you do, scope of your responsibility, and a little bit about the Sustainment Center in general.
So my name is Angela Harris. I'm located at Robins, but the Sustainment Center actually goes across Tinker, Robins, and Hill Air Force Base. In fact, we have a representative from Tinker Air Force Base, Donna, if you want to just raise your hand. So she's here from Tinker, and so the Sustainment Center is kind of unique in the fact that we do sustain the aircrafts within the Air Force fleet. But we also have arms that reach out to other organizations and other centers. So 2/3 of my dollars is actually executed at LCMC. So we use their funding and we support their aircraft. At Hill Air Force Base, we have the F-35, F-16, A-10, and F-22. Robins Air Force Base, we have C-5, C-17, C-130, and F-15. And then at Tinker Air Force Base, we have the KC-135, the E-3, the E-8, the B-52, and the B-1. So we have a unique mission in helping to execute Luke's mission. And then we also have a component of Ron's mission at the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center. So we have a big component of that at Tinker and Hill Air Force Base.
Okay, thank you, Angela. And at the end of the table is Mr. Dave Boris. Mr. Boris is the operational director here representing the Air Force Mission and Installation and Mission Support Center. I got to get my words in order here. So, Mr. Boris, why don't you do the same? Talk a little bit about AFIMSC, as we call it. And
Okay, my name is David Boris. We just recently changed our organization from AFIMSC to AFICC, which is Air Force Installation Contracting Center. This is official 1 June. Prior to that, we were a FICA, which was the Air Force Installation Contracting Agency. Prior to that, the Enterprise Support Sourcing Group. What we do is basically buy goods and services, construction. So we provide, or we buy goods and services that no one else here buys. It's what we do is we support the installations as far as construction, office supplies, medical, firefighting gear, just basically anything that isn't weapon systems.
even runways,
Including
barriers,
runways.
Buildings, you name it. Anything that the Air Force needs. And the AFIMSC organization, the center is actually headquartered out of San Antonio, Texas. So once again, we're scattered around the country and around the world. And AFIMSC, as you will see, touches every other command across the Air Force and into also many of the other services and agencies in the Department of Defense. So they have a very big mission. And so some of the things that you do and some of the NAICS codes you may operate in may also fall into what they do as well. So, all right, let's start back with Luke a minute. I know you gave them a good talk and everything, but I want you to share with the folks specifically what the companies need to know in order to work with your center.
I mean, as far as to work with our center, I know we have the how to do business with Wright-Patterson Air Force Base out there. We have contact information. We have a group of small business professionals here at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, up at Hanscom, down at Gunter, AFMETCAL, which is Heath, Ohio, Eglin Air Force Base, and then at Lackland. As far as doing business with us, I mean, you can contact us anytime. As far as opportunities, you can look on Federal Business Opportunities or FedBiz Ops. I know I'm excited about what Bill was talking about, the Google-like search engine that he has, so it makes it easier for you guys to search on opportunities. Really, it's just getting out in the community, networking, paying attention to the requirements that are out there, looking into industry days too.
Okay. Bill, since I skipped over you before, any other specifics you'd like to share with the folks on what they need to do to work with your center?
Yeah, though I talked a lot about SIBR and things like that, actually most of our awards are to small businesses through BAAs, broad area announcements. They're posted out on FedBizOps. Again, you can use the FedBizOps tool or go through my AFRLSBHub.com to find them. We have 9 research directorates in AFRL, so we're looking for a wide range of technologies from materials and manufacturing, sensors, our 711 Human Performance Wing, and School of Aerospace Medicine, our aerospace vehicles, directed energy, space vehicles, munitions, information and cyber, and then our Air Force Office of Scientific Research, or very fundamental research, primarily with academia. So we have a wide waterfront of technologies that we're looking at, and we're looking for partners. So about 1.2 billion of the 1.5 billion is flowing out through either BAA mechanisms or some of it through the services side. So.
Okay. Angela, what do they need to know to work with you all? Not just at Robbins, but elsewhere in the Sustainment Center, because they're very well connected together.
Yes, we are. Between Tinker and Robbins Hill, I call ourselves the Three Musketeers because we're constantly together. We're constantly sharing and interacting with each other. So one, I want to say ditto to what Luke said. Our doors is always open. Tinker and Hill Air Force Base, at our offices is actually located on a base, but they're willing to come out and meet you if you do not have a base pass, and have a conference center outside the base that they use to meet with customers. Our office is actually off base, so easy access. You could just drive up on the normal streets and come visit us at any time. One of the things I want to just add in to it, because we do reach over to other branches within the various centers within AFMC, that you kind of understand who does what. Kind of do a little bit of homework to know what we buy. And that's very simple between USA Spending and FPDS. You can kind of see what our typical purchases are, and then come visit us, because you may be wasting a flight because you may need to be speaking to Luke or Ron down the end of the table.
Yeah, you really bring up a good point from the sense of I've been in the position since September of last year and just trying to figure out, okay, who does Robbins? And it's like, oh, okay, you do it. And that's what, I don't think Ferris mentioned this before, but she does an AFMC directors, and we just had our meeting, 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. So we get together, we talk about different initiatives, what we're working on. Normally your small business offices aren't normally staffed with a ton of people, so we really have to, we look at ways to be innovative and productive to get out requirements and get within, let people know the requirements that are out there, interact with the community. I know from our standpoint too, I mean, you brought up a good point, Angela, is, we can have meetings on base, people get access to it, or Bill's been gracious enough for us to use the Tech Edge building, which is just past the Air Force Museum, or we've actually gone down the 4th floor building downtown, but we can meet you outside of base too if that's easier.
Did you get the impression this is a team sport that we're in? Yes, we are all very tied together, and like I said, I'm blessed with a great team. Okay.
Could I just interject one thing? If you ever want to do business with the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center, I'm basically the gatekeeper. I am one man deep. So if you ever have any questions about programs across the board, not any of the operating locations or at Kirtland, contact me. You can meet me afterwards and I'll give you my card.
And actually, I think, Ron, you just spoke to me before. He actually has pamphlets that he'll be putting out so you can take it. And I know a bunch of us brought information that you guys can use, and that's very helpful.
And Dave, how about with your center? You have a very broad reach, but how would people end up doing business with your center?
Well, with our center, being at Wright-Patterson, our main focus is on strategic sourcing and category management, whereas AFICC as a whole buys everything throughout the Air Force. So if you call me, you're probably not getting the right person that you might have seen on a requirement on FedBiz Ops. So I would look at that information on FedBiz Ops and go to that particular unit versus just, cold calling, someone at Wright-Patterson.
Yeah. Remember the white brochure? Phone numbers on the back for getting down to Texas and some other locations. Make sure that you get one of those. They'll be very helpful. All right. And Ron, you already gave your little information there. Okay. I want to kind of encourage you, now you've heard a little bit about that, to be thinking, because I'm going to ask them one more question, and then I'm going to start asking you what your questions are, and we can direct those questions to the panel members specifically or collectively. We can give them time to answer those for you, because I want to make sure that you walk away today with a nugget or two that will help you in your business strategy and in working your team with the teams that are here in place here to help you better and to help our industrial base. After all, as you all know, probably 98, 99% of the economy of the United States runs on small businesses. And that means our large businesses need our small businesses, and our small businesses need our large businesses. And we all in the Department of Defense and in the federal government as a whole need you to help support our national security efforts, and I'm a big proponent of that. So with that, my question to the panel, and we'll start again with Luke. What are, now I know you've only, been doing this just shy of a year, but I'm sure that you've learned a few lessons. You've picked up a few best practices that you might want to share with the folks out there about how they could be better prepared to maybe win contracts or even to build a partnership in some fashion that would help them win contracts.
I mean, as far as winning contracts, and from that standpoint is, get as many contacts as you can and keep knocking on the door. Once we get your information, say there's a requirement that you're excited about or wanting to know more information about, if we feel it belongs with, they have more information at one of my other counterparts, the directors, will send the information there. I mean, as far as winning business, the biggest thing is respond to the sources sought and request for information. Even if, say, for example, you want a basic contract and they have a multiple awarded, it's a multiple award contract, they'll send out requests for information. Please respond to every request, sources sought that you can, because really what they're taking from that is they're building their market research to determine whether or not it can be, for example, a small business set aside. So, and you know, what we've seen now in the past is at times businesses won't do that. Please take the time to respond to that and just, you know, continue to network. I know from my standpoint, as far as what I'm trying to do and help out the small business community is really get integrated within the program offices at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and the non-PEOs, and getting contacts there. So, for example, if we know of capabilities, we know of small businesses, we can interact with senior leaders, part of the staff meetings and the panels, and just kind of forging that strategic partnership to help out. But yeah, I mean, as far as, you know, gaining, opportunities with AFL-CMC, you know, continue to hit up your contacts, continue to ask questions, continue to work your network and figure out how strategically you can bid for that vehicle, and, you know, make sure you look at the terms and conditions of the contract and figure things out.
Okay, Dave, I'm going to move it down to the end. Dave, how about with you? What lessons learned, best practices do you think they need to know out here?
Well, just the same thing that Luke had said, RFIs, sources, that is extremely important when you're looking at doing a strategic sourcing project that involves the whole Air Force. If we don't know what your capabilities are or that you even exist, then when the team looks at that information, they can't make that decision to do a small business set-aside. We have been very successful here at Wright-Patterson doing our strategic sourcing projects that over 95% of them have been small business set-asides. So we've actually increased the participation on all the projects that we've done with small business dollars. Another thing that I would recommend is to know the requirement when we send out the sections L and M, read them, understand them, and answer exactly what they're asking for. Because if you don't put it in there, then you're not going to get credit for it, and you will not receive the award.
All right, Ron.
Let me add one little thing on the statement of capability. You don't want to generalize. You want to be specific. You want to address what's in the sources sought, point by point. And I mean, we have had situations where small businesses have not come in, and when you all don't come in with a statement of capability, it tends to go full and open, is what I've seen. So it's very important, as Lucas said, to submit a statement of capability and be very specific. If there is an acronym that's stated over and over and over again in the sources sought, I think, you know, that's obviously important to address it. And I believe, you know, if you have any questions on that, just let me know. That'll work.
Right, Angela, anything in specific in working with the Sustainment Center?
So as far as best practices, I want to say ditto to what's already been mentioned. The Air Force Sustainment Center in FY18 did over $1 billion into small business. But don't be afraid to compete in the full and open environment. There was a recent source selection that we could not set it aside because we did not have two that was qualified sources come in during the RFI. And so we went full and open. However, small businesses typically on an everyday basis can beat out a large company. So I do just as much money to a small business on a full and open than anything else because of the dollar value.
Okay.
The other thing I want to mention is I used to work at LCMC here at Wright-Pat and the contracting branch, and we did not typically use dynamic small business search in the contracting offices, but at Tinker Robinson Hill, we used that dynamic small business search as our first line of defense in finding small business. Please make sure that that is updated and accurate, having the keywords, because if your keywords is not there, we cannot find you. And then we have a tendency to go full and open because we cannot find a small business. So recently I had a gentleman in my office who came in, and that's typically one of the things that we do go over with every company, is pull up their dynamic small businesses. This is what you look like. Can I find you? And to his surprise, he had 3 words in his dynamic small business profile, you know, and he was just very shocked at the fact that, hey, I can't find myself if I pulled up me and dynamic small business start. So if you can't find yourself with the keywords, then I can't find you either. So that's one of the best practices I want to make sure I leave with you.
Bill?
I think definitely amplify all the comments on networking, but it's also take advantage of the period when solicitations are out there to talk to the end customer. What is it they're really looking for? I see people talk past each other all the time. You know, I've got this great thing and it has no bearing on what the real customer is looking for. Use that period to talk to them. Use other partners if you're struggling with business. You know, again, we want you to succeed. And yes, a lot of things are complicated, but they're easily navigated through with a little bit of help. So don't struggle, don't, you know, get those dialogues going. In an AFRL especially, if you get one of our research contracts, talk to the program manager regularly. Worst thing I see happens is the company goes off and does stuff and they rarely talk to the program manager. Be talking to them every week or two, make sure they're really engaged.
Yeah, Bill, you brought up a good point on that, talking to the customer, and actually there may be opportunities you can for subcontracting in that, which we didn't really speak to. So make sure you're an interested vendor, talk to the customer, and that we may be able to carve out something, maybe a niche that you can provide, or you can work with another, you know, be a sub to Prime, which there's a lot of dollars associated with that now too.
Could I add one little thing? I've noticed it's actually a great thing to team. If you can't do all the work yourself, look at teaming. That helps definitely with small businesses. There's also the mentor protege program, which you have a mentor over a protege, and that relationship should help the protege. So that's also something to look at when you're trying to do business with the government.
Okay. All right, it's your turn. I think we have somebody with microphones. Anybody have a question for the panel? Like I said, individually or as a whole. This is your opportunity. Ask those questions. If they said something that you didn't understand, maybe they didn't define an acronym. We got somebody up here in the front. We got a microphone somewhere here. There we go.
Hi, I'm Dr. A.J. Rowling. I have a company that's got 25,000 square foot for machining, and then I've got another 12,000 square foot with 20 PhD engineers and researchers. And my question is, how far along we're developing a way of removing paint from an aircraft, which would be something that would be great at Warner, but it's kind of in development. So what's the best approach? Because it's pretty far down the road, and it'd be more interesting to try and do something that's a later phase program, right? The thing that's special about it is that as it removes the paint, it can actually tell when it gets to the substrate and stop. So that would be very useful for removing paint. But the question is, do I approach it with AFRL? And then in that case, it might be a phase 1, which I don't know how that would work, or do I go straight to Robbins? Thank you.
Angela.
Let's start with you.
Okay. So I know we have several at all 3 locations. Tinker Robbins Hill, that is a big depot, you know, the Air Force depot that we actually tear down the aircrafts and build them back up. And we have several aspects that we have paint and deep paint booths. In fact, we're in the process of revamping some of our paint booths or deep paint booths based on various OSHA requirements and things like that to make sure. So we actually did reverted back to what they used to do years ago because of OSHA. So that would be interesting. It's a matter of talking to our clients, and we can probably get you in touch with the right person. Because it is more in the development stage, is maybe you could just go there and get some feedback and not necessarily, present something official. But that would be something that we'll be interested in.
Get the white brochure. Angela's phone number is on here to all of you. And, take that opportunity. If you don't have an opportunity to connect here during this week, take an opportunity to make a phone call and get in contact. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, a whole audience of folks, and you don't have a question. Okay.
So, I've never been on the contractor side as far as how you fill it out, but I know it is connected to the SBA website. So every time you have to go in on a yearly basis and update your profile, that's something that you can then link. There's a link within the SBA website when you update your profile, and you can link to the dynamic small business part and actually fill in additional information. And that was the problem with the gentleman, is that they really just didn't find that link to the additional information.
Can I add something to that? Dynamic Small Business Search, you should be able to also put in a description of what you do. And when I was researching on Monday, I found several contractors that had not completed that. So basically, you're looking at a blank space, and you're guessing what kind of work they do until you open it. So make sure to input that.
That's a very good put, Ron, because I've noticed when I've researched the database, there's oftentimes missing information. So if you haven't gone in there, I suggest you go in there and take a look at what's in there now and make sure it's current, accurate, and complete, as we say in the business. And if you aren't registered in that system, I suggest that you get in there and get registered. SBA.gov will give you a link to that, and you can get in there and do that. If you aren't familiar with it, this is your first time, you're just starting your business, you're interested in this, you cannot do business with the government at all in any place in the federal government unless you're registered in the System for Award Management, the SAM tool, and that also has information in there that's connected. So I suggest you check the things out, as was said, and see if you can find yourself. Make sure the keywords are accurate for you.
If you are trying to register into the database, you can do so through SAM.
Yes.
SAM would directly connect you on that, and the database was broke 2 weeks ago.
Right.
It wasn't working.
Right.
My question is with the FBO portal, I'm in the computer industry, basically, and there's sometimes we get stuff that sources sought information is wrong or it's outdated equipment that they're looking for. As a technology provider, I will go back and get in contact with the person and give them the correct information. They put it back out to bid, and I lose the opportunity because another contractor who has a higher level is able to outprice me. What can a small business do with that, to ensure that the information I'm giving, the IP I'm giving back to the contracting officer is not taken and, basically displayed to everybody else, and I'm losing out because of price? No answer?
Luke, you wanna take a stab at it?
I mean, thank you for first calling us up and letting them know about the requirements and what they need. Now I'm trying to think, besides trying to negotiate better prices and things like that, Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
But, yeah, correct. Yeah, that wouldn't be,
When it's competed, I mean, that's really tough. Was it a small business set aside?
It was not.
It was not. It was full and open?
And it was an LPTA
So they
full
should-
and open.
We're not at the forefront of actually speaking directly with the owner of the contract or the opportunity.
Understand. Yeah. And what's hard too, if you don't have the rule of two or more small businesses, you aren't going to have that small business set aside, and then you are competing with the big guys.
Yeah, but when you have 37, companies that are under 8A,
Yeah,
normal.
correct. Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's bad on our part, not getting
If
the
they didn't,
information
that's
out and
correct.
not getting the correct requirements.
So my question is, should I or companies like you be engaged quicker?
Yes.
You should, yes.
Coming along?
Yes, you should.
Yes, please engage with us.
As early as possible. You should contact the small business professional or the director of small business at that location that you're dealing with.
And I would add to it, some of the advice I told some companies that have come to me is tell your buddies to come in and respond. Because if they don't have, if you only come in, then they're not going to do that rule of two. And I says, I want this to be a set aside. That is my wish and goal, but I need your other buddies to come in and compete.
I'm seeing the same problem on my end, and I mentioned that earlier, where small businesses aren't coming in. And I don't know what, I guess the issue is, perhaps they think, oh, it's nuclear weapons, so we can't qualify for that. But that isn't always true, because not everything we do has a nuclear component. I'm not saying most of it does, but there are requirements out there that we have, for example, a BPA for machining that has nothing to do with the nuclear enterprise. So,
I mean, also on that point, I mean, as soon as you know that, reach out to that office and then reach out to us and, because market research, we're continuously doing market research, and that's, with them, yeah, they really should have known who was out there, and that it
I think that
pretty much changed the entire acquisition
it
strategy.
sounds like poor market research personally, but I wasn't involved, so I can't tell, can't say anything.
And that is one of the keys. And so, along with us doing market research, you need to do your market research as a business. And if you know that there are other folks out there that are your competitors, and all of you know who your competitors are, but that's okay. If there are two or more of you, we can actually do a set-aside. Yes, you're going to compete with your competitors, but I would rather compete in the small business arena than in a full and open arena in a lot of cases, as she just pointed out. You will have better opportunities in that. Plus, it really helps the Air Force to know who's out there in that space. We are always looking for companies, and we are trying to help our contracting officers and our program managers open their aperture, and it is happening, but we need your support in doing that. So I highly suggest, as Angela said, the buddy system, and I found that to be working more and more because we're doing a lot more small business set-asides because people are taking the time to respond to those RFIs, time to respond to those sources sought. And I know it does take a little time, but, if there's something that you've got that's really important that you think that we need in the Air Force or Department of Defense, please take the time to do that. We are all in this nation going to reap that benefit.
And actually, not only, the Office of Small Business with AFL-CMC or anyone else, but then also you have the Small Business Administration, Procurement Center representatives, and then also the PTACs too, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center reps too, so.
Right.
They're there to help you.
Yeah.
Can you cross over PTAC to different states? Or do you have
Yes. The question was, can you cross over? PTACs are connected to other PTACs. As a matter of fact, we were just in a big conference with the PTACs, the Small Business Administration, and all of the Department of Defense small business offices in St. Louis just a few weeks back. So we do all get together. We do cross-pollinate. We do events together. We do training together. We train businesses together. I do several events a year with the Cincinnati PTAC, the Dayton PTAC, and the Athens, Ohio PTAC, and the Columbus PTAC. That's just in Ohio. And then I'm connected out to the others and have done other events. So, yes, don't be afraid to ask your local PTAC who a PTAC might be in another area. or ask the small business person that you contact in one of those brochures who their PTAC is at their area, particular area, because you have access to them as small businesses. And the nice thing, you know, you may have to, you know, you can probably do things on the phone, but you may have to travel, but that's one less expense whenever the cost of working with them is free for your use.